Hello you lovely lot and welcome to my channel. I'm Katie and we are doing a follow-up from the BRUSHO video. Of course, if you are new here and haven't got a clue what I'm on about, please feel free to subscribe and check out the playlists where this will be. I'll also be leaving a link to this at the end of the video and I highly recommend you watch it. For those of you lovely lot who have done all of that and watched the previous video, enjoy. This is the follow-up from adding gum arabic to BRUSHO. Now, I'm sure you'll have just noticed that when I was showing the pans on the camera there wasn't much in there, and I accept that too. And the reason being is I didn't want to make a huge batch for it to not work, and also just how the BRUSHOs themselves are, I guess, for want of better words, are constructed. They are a salt-based pigment, so they're going to be very crystally and they're not going to dry very evenly, unlike a watercolour per se. I am pleased to say though that once they dried out, even though there wasn't much in there, they still packed a huge punch. And more relieved, they reactivated just fine as well. I'm sure you noticed that on the quick little swatcheroo I did just. But swatcheroos aside, we're all here to see how it works in practice. So I have another epic doodle that I've done whilst on my phone job, and it's on Grumbacher watercolour paper, or Grumbacher, I'm never really sure how to say that, but you know the one I mean. It's a slightly textured watercolour paper, and I thought that would be a great surface to try this on. I've lined it using a Rotring Tiki as well as Sakura pens, and I'm a little disappointed that they ever so slightly came back to life. This drawing had sat for quite some time uncoloured, and I was a little surprised that the black ink ever so slightly came back to life. But that aside, it's not going to stop my progress with this. Now, my main reason for adding gum arabic to these BRUSHOs was to stop the crazy warping and the crazy patterns and have a little bit more control over this medium. As I've mentioned before, it's salt based, and you know what happens when you add salt to watercolours? You get these crazy patterns. It encourages the different pigments to flow, and you know, I've used it plenty of times and I definitely recommend you try it yourselves if you want to add some texture. However, when using BRUSHOs, sometimes you want a nice smooth cover, and that doesn't always happen with some of the pigments. Some of the pigments are made from multiple dyes and the salt causes that to split, and again, if you're wanting to use that as a special effect, perfect. But if you're just wanting to just colour something in and have consistent colours, I was trying to avoid that. The gum arabic, as it is also a binder, keeps everything together, and I'm pleased to say again that the pan form, the dried out pan form, it worked just as well. You don't need a huge amount of water to reactivate it, which is good because that means if you're sort of on the go with it, you haven't got all this dye sloshing around. I will have to note though, it will pretty much, especially in small quantities like what I've done, it will reactivate the whole thing, so I do recommend letting you dry them out thoroughly or just be sparing on the colours you use there. But anyway, that aside, let's talk about what's going on here. So we have a lizard as our subject choice, and again, one of the main reasons I wanted to work a little bit more with BRUSHO was for that delightful transparency. Sometimes when I'm using watercolours, and obviously they're more pigment based, you're going to have some of them pigment particles overlapping the lines you've drawn, and that's just the nature of them, and that's fair enough. I do like to work where there's no opacity to the paint, so all of that line work I've done beneath doesn't get lost. And as you'll probably see there, this lizard has got a lot of line work in there. I'm really happy with this first layer that I've managed to do. I think the colours blended nicely, and more importantly, they layered really well as well, still keeping those line details in there. So I really highly recommend you guys try this if you have BRUSHO. I know there's a similar product out there sold over in the States, which is great because I think everyone should be able to try this medium. Although I still stand by, I don't highly recommend these for art pieces that are going to go up on a wall or in a lot of direct light, because their light fast rating isn't great, I believe. However, if you're wanting to do something to make some prints with, they're perfect. And again, that transparency is still there, so you're not going over all of your hard work and losing it to, I guess, a thicker pigment. I'd say the only downside that I found, and maybe it's just with this picture and the choices I made, was the background. I think maybe there might have been a little bit too much of a gum Arabic ratio in some of the colours there, especially for on larger surface areas. It just, I don't know, I think if I could change anything here, it would be that background. I just didn't like how it dried and how it blended. But whilst we're on the subject of it drying, I do feel like I have to mention, again, it's because of the gum Arabic in there and the ratios, and that is something that I encourage us all to experiment with if we're doing this ourselves. It does leave a bit of a shine, not too dissimilar to how the Gansai Kuretake watercolour paints, you know how you have that slight sheen there, and that's obviously down to the binders and those paints. I think the same thing's going on here. Obviously there's no gelatine in this one though. One thing I was super happy about was how well it layered. So obviously I put those initial colours down and let them blend and merge together how I wanted to, and remaining fully in control because of the gum Arabic in there. But again, I wanted to see how it would layer. I didn't particularly want it to bring to life the layers below, which again is something that happens so very easily with BRUSHO, and then you get that strange warping because of the salt properties in there. But I love the fact that they layered really nicely, and the colours beneath allowed the colours on top to represent themselves differently, I guess. It's kind of hard to describe, but the dark blue that I was adding on the areas of shadow, it didn't completely dominate what I was painting over, and I think it created a nice balance. And I guess really when you do watercolours, not only do you mix your colours in the pan, but you are in effect mixing colours with your layers as well, and I'm super happy that that's what I achieved with this. One other thing to note as well is letting them dry out into pans and then obviously using them here. They did not lose their vibrancy, which again, this is why I love BRUSHOs. Another thing to note as well, and I thought this would be a good test, was to see how it would interact with a white gel pen like I'm using now. I've used them before on just raw BRUSHOs that I've painted, and it reactivates what's underneath and you get an off-white depending on the colour you're going over. That didn't happen here. It sealed it up perfectly and I was super pleased with it, and I feel that I might have to do a few more videos going through and exploring some of the other colours that I have and I haven't showcased on this channel yet, so please let me know what you think there. I am super pleased with how this came out. It looked a bit dodgy to start off with and flat, but once I was able to add those additional colours, we were on to a winner. Let me know as well, you guys, what you think down below. I always appreciate everything you write down there and I always see them. The first BRUSHO video is on screen now if you want a quick recap. I just want to say thank you for watching and I'll see you lovely lot soon. Bye!